Hey, I'm Tom. It took me way too long to figure out I was a total chump, building my whole world on trust, loyalty, and love, only to realize the one person I banked on was playing me for a fool for over a decade. The truth hit me like a freight train on a random Wednesday. I'd already dropped the kids off at school, waving them goodbye as they bickered over who got shotgun, and was halfway to the office when it dawned on me. I forgot my MacBook charger at home. No biggie, right? But I needed that thing to get through the day, so I spun the car around and headed back. I pulled into the driveway instead of the garage, not overthinking it, just figuring I'd be in and out quick. Didn't want to deal with the garage door's obnoxious rumble and that annoying clank it makes when it shuts. My wife, Katrina, works with me at my consulting biz. She's got a finance background, sharp as a tack with numbers, so it was a no-brainer to bring her on board. I handled the big picture stuff, vision, operations, landing the major contracts. She runs the show on sales, tracks payroll, and deals with vendor accounts. I handed her the keys to the kingdom, joint control of accounts, full back-end access, the works. Never once doubted her. Why would I? She's my wife, my partner in life and business. Or so I thought. That morning, she mentioned she had a jam-packed schedule of meetings at the office, so I assumed the house would be empty. I slipped inside quietly, beelining for the kitchen counter, where I'd left the charger plugged in. It was stashed behind the toaster, right where I'd forgotten it. As I reached for it, I heard muffled voices drifting from somewhere in the house. I froze, more out of reflex than anything. The sound was coming from the hallway, near our bedroom. At first, I figured Katrina might be on a Zoom call, or maybe stayed home with a headache she didn't mention. Curious, I edged closer, but as the voices got clearer, I realized it wasn't a work call. It was Katrina, chatting on speakerphone, her tone light and almost flirty. Another voice chimed in, a woman, older, probably her mom. They talk all the time, so I wasn't surprised. I was about to turn back, not wanting to eavesdrop, when her mom's voice stopped me cold. "Katrina! Honey, won't Tom just fall a part of you up and leave him?" Katrina's laugh was sharp, dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, please, Mom. I couldn't care less about his fragile little feelings. Get this, he's still convinced those kids are his. Can you believe it? They don't even look like him. He's like the perfect sucker to keep around, totally clueless." Her mom let out a low chuckle, warning her to watch out with guys like him. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my brain struggling to process the gut punch I just heard. My hand shook as I grabbed the charger and slipped out of the house, quiet as a ghost. I climbed into the car, my mind stuck on a loop. What if it's true? What if my kids aren't mine? And if they're not, whose are they? Katrina and I have been hitched for 10 years. We met in our late 20s, both a little rough around the edges from life's ups and downs, but hopeful enough to give love another shot. We built what I thought was a solid, normal family life. 2 kids, a routine that felt comforting in its predictability. I dragged myself out of bed early to whip up breakfast, pack their lunches, and pile them into the car for the school run. The kids would squabble over who got a ride up front, and I'd play mediator while weaving through morning traffic. That morning, I dropped them off like always, clueless that my whole world was already crumbling behind my back. By the time I pulled into the office parking lot, one thought burned in my brain. I needed the truth, no matter how ugly. Step 1 was a paternity test. Nothing else would make sense until I knew if I was really their dad. Sitting at my desk, I started Googling at-home DNA test kits, desperate to figure out if my life was a lie. I found a few options online. Most were simple enough. But I wasn't in the mood to wait. I needed answers fast, preferably local. After some digging, I landed on a provider with solid reviews, clear instructions, and a quick turnaround. I called their hotline, and the woman on the line was calm and professional. She said if I ordered the kit that day, it'd show up by tomorrow. I'd collect the samples, send them back, and get results in about 2 weeks. 2 weeks felt like an eternity, but I gave her my shipping info and hung up. That night, when I walked through the door, Katrina greeted me with her usual fake smile, planting a quick kiss on my cheek like everything was peachy. "Hey, babe, how was your day?" she chirped, all sweet and innocent. If I hadn't heard her venomous words myself, I'd still be by her act, thinking she actually loved me. That's what shook me the most, how effortlessly she played the part of the devoted wife while tearing me apart behind my back. Man, it blew my mind how effortlessly Katrina kept up her little charade, and how I must have been totally blind to it for years. So I decided to play along, putting on my own Oscar-worthy act. I'd ask about her day, all casual, keeping my poker face tight. The last thing I wanted was for her to sniff out that I was on to her. If she sensed anything off, she'd switch up her game, and I needed her to stay cocky, thinking she had me wrapped around her finger. The DNA test kit showed up the next day, right on time, in a plain white package that looked innocent enough. I didn't touch it until the kids were tucked in after bedtime stories. The instructions said I needed hair strands with the roots still attached. So I crept into their rooms, moving slow and careful while they slept, labeling the samples like some kind of spy, sealing it all up and packing away. The next morning, I swung by the post office on my way to work and dropped the envelope in the mail, my stomach in knots, BY day 2 of waiting for those DNA results. I was unraveling, feeling like everything I thought I knew was slipping through my fingers. My brain was stuck in overdrive, chasing questions I couldn't answer. Every time I looked at my kids, it was like staring at a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing. I needed cold, hard facts, not wild guesses or gut feelings. Then it hit me. A few years back, one of my business partners was pulling some shady moves behind my back. I'd hired a private investigator to dig into it, and the guy was legit. He uncovered stuff I'd never have found on my own. If he could crack what a sneaky businessman was hiding, he could damn well figure out what my wife was up to. So I dug up his number, called him, and laid it out. I needed his help again, but this time it was personal. I told him to track Katrina, where she went, who she met, what she did when I wasn't around. I handed over her photo, her car's license plate, her work schedule, anything that might give him a lead. I asked for updates as he got them. He didn't pry, just took the job and got to work. A week later, he called. Katrina, he said, was slipping out of the office some afternoons, always around the same time, and always ending up in a sketchy part of town, nowhere near our usual business haunts. He'd seen her park outside a drab brownstone apartment complex twice, staying about 40 minutes each time before bouncing. That's when I started watching her myself, as subtle as I could. I noticed how she'd toss out excuses like, "Oh, babe, I'm running late," causes some client drama, or gripe about traffic when I knew the roads were clear. She was always quick with a story, but now I was actually listening, and her BS wasn't adding up. I told the PI to keep digging. I wasn't ready to move on half-baked info. I needed the whole ugly picture. I asked for photos, timestamps, the works. If Katrina still thought I was her perfect fool, I'd let her keep that delusion a little longer. 2 weeks after mailing the DNA kit, the results landed in my inbox. I'd psyched myself up, thinking I was ready, but when I saw the words excluded as a biological father, it felt like the floor dropped out. Years of believing I was their dad, poof, gone. I wasn't their biological father. And Katrina? She knew. She'd known all along, laughing behind my back. The next day, the PI called, and I'd almost forgotten about him with my world imploding. His voice was way too calm for the bomb he was about to drop. "Your wife's been meeting someone regularly," he said, then gave me a name that made my gut lurch. It wasn't just some random guy. It was a client, someone I'd called a friend for years. The PI had photos, 3 meetups over 2 weeks. The way they touched in those shots, no way to mistake what was going on. After that call, I started seeing things I'd missed. Katrina would drop this guy's name in passing, all casual, but it was too frequent. I'd written it off as work talk before, but now I saw it for what was affection, hiding right under my nose. All the signs I'd ignored slammed into me like a tidal wave. Betrayal isn't just about secrets. It's about the stuff you choose to overlook. What gutted me most was how long she'd been living this double life, right alongside ours, smirking like she was untouchable. I started wondering if this guy was the real father of the kids. The DNA test only told me who wasn't the dad, not who was. But one thing was crystal clear. It wasn't me. Every time I caught my reflection, I saw the idiot Katrina mocked. The guy who poured his heart into a marriage that was a lie. The dad who wasn't. The husband who never saw it coming. The friend who got stabbed in the back by both of them. It didn't stop there. My suspicion started creeping into our business. I wondered her lies were just about the affair, or if they'd infected the company too. If she could deceive me this deeply at home, what was stopping her from screwing me over at work? Something about our recent deals with that client. You know, Katrina's special friend fell off like the numbers were playing hide and seek. I didn't breathe a word to her, didn't poke or prod. Why tip off, miss? I'm so slick that I was onto her. Instead, I brought an external auditor and told him to dig deep into our company's transactions with that guy, like he was searching for buried treasure. The auditor spent weeks combing through financials, and when he dropped his report, it was worse than I'd imagined. That client, who was supposed to be forking over cash to us, was actually getting paid back through some shady shell company. It was dressed up as a legit third-party vendor. But the auditor traced it to a bogus business address and a single puppet master pulling the strings. And guess whose name was plastered on every single outgoing payment? Katrina's. She'd personally greenlit every dime that left our accounts. This wasn't just a few oopsies in the books. It was a full-on scam. That shell company was a funnel, siphoning money out of our business. And Katrina was the one turning the tap. When I pieced it together, the financial shenanigans made her betrayal crystal clear. This wasn't just some messy fling with her side piece. It was a calculated heist. Katrina had been looting our company, funneling funds to this fake entity tied to her lover. Her boyfriend wasn't just her partner in bed. He was her accomplice in fraud. She was using her role at the firm to rubber stamp fake payments, bleeding the business dry and feeding the profits to the guys she was sneaking around with. Her affair didn't just shatter my trust. It was tanking my company. Once I saw the whole ugly picture, I knew I had to play it smart, not go off half-cocked. First move, stop the cash flow. I slipped into the company's financial systems and rerouted the approval process, quietly stripping Katrina's access without raising a red flag. I froze all payments to that shell company, flagging them for manual review, but in reality, I'd slammed the brakes on them completely. I didn't let on to her, didn't ask a single question. I wanted her to keep strutting around, thinking her little scheme was still humming along, while I dismantled it brick by brick. With the money locked down, I knew the next step was legal muscle. I called my lawyer, laid out the whole sordid mess, and told him I wanted out of this marriage. One thing I made crystal clear, I wasn't about to lose everything I'd busted my hump to build. Not my company, not my houses, not my investments. He nodded, then mapped out a plan. We'd shuffle my assets into a trust, one that wasn't directly tied to me but legally bulletproof to safeguard my interests. It'd take time and had to be done with ninja-level stealth to avoid tipping Katrina off, but it was legit and airtight. Next up, the divorce. My lawyer brought in a divorce attorney to tackle the family side. He suggested filing in a nearby state where cheating still carried big weight in court. That was a game changer, cause Katrina's backstabbing wouldn't just be a sob story. It'd be legal ammo. We started prepping the paperwork quietly. I signed where they pointed, answered every question straight up, and followed their playbook to a T. I wasn't looking for a knockdown, drag-out fight. I wanted a clean split that kept me in the driver's seat. Over the next few months, I slowly moved every major asset into the trust, but I didn't rush it. I played it cool, spacing it out to avoid suspicion. On paper, everything went into my mom's name, but the legal setup kept me in control. I made damn sure Katrina couldn't lay a finger on anything once the divorce kicked off. By the end, all the stuff she thought was ours was legally out of her greedy reach. The toughest part wasn't the paperwork. It was faking at home. Every night, I'd walk into that house, knowing what I knew, and still had to play the clueless husband. I'd flash a smile when I felt like snarling, gnawed through dinner while choking down my rage, and keep my voice steady when I wanted to scream. I started lingering at the office, burying myself in work, or taking business trips I didn't need. I kept my distance, not just to stop myself from blowing up, but to keep Katrina from getting even a whiff that I was onto her. If she caught on, she'd start covering her tracks, and I couldn't risk that. I was already drowning in a house full of her lies. I just needed to finish carving out my escape hatch before I bolted. I bided my time until the trust was locked in, and every asset I cared about was safe. Only then did I tell my lawyer to pull the trigger and file the lawsuit. Katrina, with her smug, "Oh, Tom is such a dope" attitude, had no idea what was coming. We'd rounded up every shady financial document, every sneaky late-night wire transfer, every payment disguised as a legit vendor. The evidence was ironclad. I told my lawyer to hit Katrina and her lover, my so-called friend, with a lawsuit for corporate fraud. I wasn't just coming after them for cheating. I was dragging them to court for bleeding my company dry. The morning the court summons were set to be served, I played it safe. I pulled the kids out of school and sent them to my parents' place, far from the chaos about to erupt. It wasn't just about keeping them safe. It was about shielding their hearts. They didn't need to hear their mom screeching, throwing shade, and pointing fingers at everyone but herself. I knew it'd get messy, and I wasn't about to let them get caught in the crossfire. It didn't take long for Katrina to lose it. The second those papers hit her hands, she stormed into my office like a tornado with a grudge. No heads up, no knock, just pure, unfiltered rage. She slammed the summons onto my desk like it was a personal attack, not the consequences of her own actions. Her voice was sharp, practically vibrating with disbelief. "What in the actual heck, Tom? You're suing me? Are you for real right now?" I didn't raise my voice or blink. I locked eyes with her and said coolly, "If you're so innocent, sweetheart, take it to court. Prove it." Her jaw dropped, but nothing came out, just a tiny quiver in her lip, like the moment her lies started catching up with her. She spun around, fuming but rattled, and stormed out. For the first time, I saw a crack in her smug facade, fear creeping through her arrogance. That night, the real fireworks went off. The second I walked through the door, Katrina charged at me like a bull. "You took my kids, you jerk. What's wrong with you? Snatching them without even a heads up." I stayed calm, deliberately hanging my coat with slow, measured moves. Then she screamed, loud enough to rattle the windows, "Why'd you steal them? They're not even yours anyway." And there it was, the mask finally ripped off. That one line, spat out in the heat of the moment, was her admitting the truth out loud for the first time. She froze, realizing she'd just blown her own cover. I looked at her, then walked to my home office, opened a drawer, and pulled out 2 envelopes. The divorce papers, already signed by me, and the DNA test results confirming what I'd known for weeks. I handed them over and said, "I've known for a while. Katrina, that's why this marriage is done." She tore into the envelopes, her face stuck somewhere between panic and denial. Then I slid the PI's photos across the desk, hotels, dinners, kisses, all captured in crisp, high-res reality. She went silent, her mouth opening, but no words coming out. For Katrina, queen of snark, that was a rare moment. When she finally found her voice, it wasn't to say sorry. "Oh no," she went straight for threats. "You think you're going to get away with this, Tom? I'll bleed you dry in court. You'll be left with nothing." I let out a dry laugh. "Katrina, I already own nothing," I said, calm as could be. "You've got 1 week to pack your bags and get out of this house, which, by the way, you don't own anymore. Oh, and you're fired." Embezzlement breaks the first rule in our employee handbook, Han. Her glare could have burned a hole through me, but she was cornered. "This ain't over, Tom," she snapped. I met her eyes and said evenly, "Then bring it on, darling." I never thought I'd have called the cops on a woman I vowed to love forever. But that day came. I gave her a week to leave after filing for divorce, but she stayed put, acting like she still ran the show. So one morning, with a heavy heart and a sour taste in my mouth, I watched as the police escorted her out. The fraud case took longer, way longer. The forensic accountants dug into the company records and found Katrina and her lover had been siphoning funds for nearly 2 years. Their lawyers tried floating an out-of-court settlement, desperate to avoid a public ruling that'd tank her lover's business. Something about spooking his investors. I didn't give a damn. I shot it down. I wanted every dirty detail inked in the public record, signed and sealed. So we went the long route. The court ordered them to pay back every penny. The restitution crushed them, leaving them drowning in debt. They looked like deer in headlights when the gavel dropped, like they actually thought they could charm their way out of it. The divorce was no prettier. It dragged on for months. Katrina strutted into court, chin high, still thinking she could spin her way to a win. Her lawyer pushed for spousal support, claiming I owed her a cushy lifestyle. I countered with bank statements, shell company records, and those DNA tests. The judge saw right through her nonsense. She'd spent our money on another man, lied to me for years, and let me believe I was a dad to kids who weren't biologically mine. The court sided with me on almost everything. Katrina got no spousal support, and what little she was awarded in assets went straight to paying back the money she'd stolen from my company. She walked out of that courtroom with nothing but a purse and a trash reputation. But the kids? They were the hardest part. They picked up on things. Kids are way sharper than we think. One night, my youngest climbed into my lap, wrapped her arms around my neck, and whispered, "You're still my dad, right?" That broke me. I had every reason to walk away, every legal right, but I couldn't. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. So I fought for custody, determined to keep them out of the wreckage Katrina created. The court saw it my way, no contest. I got full custody, and that was the only win that really mattered. Those kids were my heart, and no DNA test could change that.